Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. It's your mom mentor and caregiver coach, Melissa. And today, guys, I am beyond excited to have my special guest on the podcast who happens to be my Christian life coach, Erin Kay. Erin is a mom of four. She's an ambitious Christian mom who is building her own business, but is very intentional about making sure that she fills her cup physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I came across Erin and her business partner, Andrea Anderson, at a time when I was just really struggling with my spiritual self-care. And so having Andrea and Erin, both as my coaches has been a godsend. And I'm so excited that Erin blocked that time out of her busy day to day to not only do a coaching session with me, but also to be a guest on the podcast. Is just it's so exciting. I'm so excited. So Erin, let me introduce you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, about your business, and share with our audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, so thank you for having me be here today. Like Melissa said, my name is Erin Kay. I'm a licensed master level social worker and a certified Christian health and life coach. And I help driven Christian women who are looking for more joy and more energy and are ready to stop the spin cycle of overwhelm. I help them to recalibrate their lives using a process of simple scripture-based shifts. And just like Melissa said, we focus on the whole person. That's where my social work training comes in. We focus on the whole person. You can't just isolate the spiritual or the mental or the emotional. It all works together. So I work on all areas of women's lives. I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. And most of what I do is virtually. I also have Holy Healthy Christian Moms, which is the business that I work together with Andrea on. And we help Christian women become wholly healthy in all areas of their lives too. So a couple different programs out there. So on a personal level, I am a wife to Wade. We've been married 17 years in August. It'll be in this August coming up. And we have 4 kids. We have a 10-year-old daughter, an 8-year-old son, and then 6-year-old boy girl twins. So we are busy. So I know well about the role of being a caregiver because I have a lot of little people I have to care for.
Right. And excuse me, I love that like Erin touched on is that they all work together. Like, guys, you've listened to me do my mantra on whole body self-care and, about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and how with me, I teach my STEM method, spiritually connected, thought management, emotional release, and movement throughout the day, because it really is important that we touch on all 4 of those areas. And I am so sick, guys, of people saying, oh, self-care is a treat or a reward. It is not a treat or a reward. It is an essential cornerstone to how we're able to show up as busy moms and busy caregivers and even ambitious business women to be able to fulfill the needs of our clients. And Erin, have you had a moment where in your journey, like, could you share a little bit about the timeline of your journey of what awoken you to a moment in time in your journey where you realized, you know what? I'm not really keeping my cup full. I'm not really hitting all four of these really critical pillars that are so important to how I show up as a mom, to how I show up as a wife, to how I show up as a daughter of Christ, as a ambitious Christian coach. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So 2016 is when my tower came tumbling down, so to speak. At that point in time, my twins had just been born. And from the outside, it looked like we had it all together. At the time my twins were born, my oldest was 3 and my middle had turned 2 the week before. So I had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and newborn twins. So that's just a lot. But then 9 weeks after they were born, the twins were born, my son brought home RSV from preschool, which that happens, as adults, it's a cold we get, but for infants, it can be fatal. And so it was a Sunday afternoon and it was 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon. I was changing my twin daughter's diaper. And I just noticed her breathing was a little abnormal. Like she was belly breathing. And I'm like, this just isn't right. So I told my husband, I said, I'm just going to run up to the urgent care real quick and like get her checked out, and I'll be home. I'll be home in an hour, one of those things. Well, I didn't come home for a week. She ended up at the urgent care. They couldn't see her because she was too small it was a pediatric urgent care, which that just kind of blows my mind, like a pediatric urgent care and you can't see infants, but okay. So, but they were kind enough to come out and just listen to her and look at her. And they said, we see some of what you're saying. We don't see all of what you're saying, but you're the mom and you know her best. So if you think that this is a situation for her, then you need to go ahead and take her down to the children's hospital downtown. So I said, okay, I'll do that. Well, from the span of time that I saw her respirations decreasing and changing and being just a little funny to 5:30 in the afternoon, she was a totally different child. She was having a severe hard time breathing. Her eyes were sunken in and purple. She wasn't eating. And so they ended up admitting us to the hospital. And she ended up in the PICU for 2 collapsed lungs. And she wasn't eating. And the respiratory doctor, the pulmonologist, came in and said, if she doesn't turn the corner by the time I come back for rounds tomorrow morning, we're going to have to intubate her. And I'm like, okay, this like 9-year-old tiny little baby. Meanwhile, her twin is at home, who also got the cold, who he's getting worse. So then he ended up having to come to the hospital. And so I had one twin on the regular floor and another twin in the PICU. And then these 2 other kids at home, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And it was like, I can't do all of this. The twins lost 35% of their body weight. They were perfectly healthy when they were born. They were both right at 7 pounds when they were born. But they got down to 5 pounds. And so when we got home, we had to enter into a period of quarantine. So we were experts by the time 2020 came around, where my twins could not go out for essentially 6 months. And because another cold or flu or stomach virus could have been fatal because they had no reserve. They lost all their reserve. So I have these 2 toddlers and these 2 twins, and then I have to quarantine and all of this. And meanwhile, my husband is just not knowing how to cope with this because prior to this, there was an accidental medication error when I was discharged from the hospital, and I overdosed at home when the twins were 4 days old. So I had to be readmitted to the hospital for several days to detox and all the things. So there's just like trauma after trauma after trauma. And so my marriage really started to get affected by it. My finances really started to get affected by it, and it all started crumbling down. And so then I took a job with VIP Kid, teaching kids in China how to speak English. So I was staying up all night teaching kids in China, taking care of my family all day with these twins that are quarantined. And then like my marriage is like, what's that, and it all came tumbling down. I was living off of 6 packs of Coke Classic and peanut M&Ms, which is just not healthy. So bit by bit, things started to calm down. And I remember looking in the mirror one morning and the Lord very clearly telling me, like, you aren't taking care of your body that I gave you. Like, you aren't taking care of this one life, and I need you to do something about it. Because I was overweight. I had horrible habits. And that was my turning point. I was looking in the mirror. And so then I got my health right, and then realized that he wanted me to help other women who were in that similar situation. It was looking at somebody in the mirror, knowing that that's not who I am, and my core is not the reflection that was coming back at me. Mm-hmm. So that was my big moment.
Yeah. And with that being said, I think it's so interesting is like when we experience trauma, when we experience a big change in our life, be it with ourselves and our own health, or it's a byproduct of a trauma that a loved one went through, whether it's a death or like for me, it's an illness with my husband, the progression of the decline, I will say, isn't always like immediate. It can happen kind of slow. And, sometimes it takes you a little while to figure out that you're in a storm. Mm-hmm. A lot of things are happening, but sometimes you don't know right away that you're in a storm. And sometimes your reaction to that storm isn't apparent in the beginning. And so I think for you, I think it's interesting how you really hit rock bottom before you realize, okay, I'm in a storm. and I need to figure out how to get out of that storm. But I think it's interesting how just for you, it was one simple moment of looking in the mirror and go, I'm not taking care of myself and I need to change that. And also realizing too, the Lord giving you the blessing of, okay, if it's happening to you, somebody else is probably dealing with the same problem. So I want you to be an advocate for them. And that's your ministry. That's your calling that I'm laying on your heart. And I want to say, guys, is that if you're in a storm right now, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be okay. And I want you to realize that the progress to get back to where things are calm, things are stable, it's not going to happen overnight. And we're not expecting it. Both of us as coaches, we're not going to tell you that if you do X, Y, and Z, it's going to be immediately back to where you were prior to the trauma happening. But at the same time, we want you to take actionable steps to work through it, because just letting things be the way they are is not a way of honoring your temple and your family and the life that God has given you either, because you deserve and your family deserves to have fulfillment in all areas. And so it might mean taking the road less traveled, and it might be hard, but if Erin can do it, if I can do it, you can do it. So when you had this realization that you wanted to help and serve other women, and that you yourself were in a pickle of, I need to really amp up on my self-care, what did that look like day to day? Was it like instantly coming up with a plan, or just maybe just daily realizing, okay, I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to just carve out maybe 15 minutes for myself or something? So what did that look like though in real time for you, with trying to figure out how you realized you had gone through trauma and things that you'd hit rock bottom, but how do you start getting over that? It doesn't happen overnight. So how did you figure that out?
Yeah, no, it definitely does not happen overnight, because you don't get to that point overnight either.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could hear from my story, there was all these like this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And when you're in the trauma and the crisis, I'm not, when my twins are fighting for their life, my forefront was not my self-care. It was keeping my twins alive. And so coming on the back side of it, one of the first things I had to do was have an open and honest conversation with those who I trust and love the most, with my husband, not sitting down with my kids. They were very young at the time, but sitting down with my husband and saying, like, this is where I am and I need help. And so pulling other people around me to support me was huge. Like just being able to like step out and be like, I am really broken right now and I need help. Mm-hmm. And then having those conversations of coming up with a plan, like, okay, so what is this going to look like? And what do you need? And so then making those shifts and those adjustments, and then telling people like, I'm going to need you, because I know that I'm going to want to fall off the bandwagon, or I know that I'm going to want to go this way with my thoughts, and just having those people to help and support me. And of course, like involving the Lord in it. Because that's kind of how I got where I am now is I saw so many people trying to get their health back on track. And they kept failing over and over and over again and becoming very frustrated. And so me taking a step back was like, well, what is missing? Like, why are they not being able to move the needle? It was, they were missing the Lord, and they were missing the scripture, and they were missing the grace and the mercy that comes when we follow him. So that's really how I kind of got over here, is seeing the impact that pulling that in my life has made, that stability, the rock instead of the sinking sand.
Right. And I think that's something, and I love where this is going, because this ties in perfectly, actually, honestly, guys, with the coaching call I just had with Erin before this podcast episode recording, is that we talked about how it's interesting, not to say that all secular resources or tools are bad. It's just interesting what kind of came to light for us in our conversation is that secular really puts the emphasis on you yourself. You're doing all the work. There's no help. There's no grace. There's no accountability. Whereas with spiritual resources and a spiritual perspective, we have the grace of the Lord. He is our rock, as it says in 2 Samuel. He is our refuge. His timeline is perfect. Our timeline is not supposed to be what we think it is. It's supposed to be God. It's God's. And sometimes it means it's a slow progression to get back on track. And like Erin was saying, the progression of going to rock bottom didn't happen overnight. So of course, the progression of getting back on track holistically, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, guys, it's not going to happen overnight either. And having the ability to build your support network, like what I teach with STEM, and it kind of ties in with prompt too, but with STEM, emotional release, the essence of being able to release your emotions is having that support network, be it family, be it friends, be it a coach or mentor, like what Erin and I are for you guys in our own ways with our work, be it a support group, in your church or virtually, I don't care where, Facebook, there's a ton of them. Having that accountability, guys, to hold you accountable to keep moving the needle forward and being able to walk the walk and talk the talk is huge. It's critical. That's the biggest takeaway. There's nothing else that I've gained from working with Erin and her partner, Andrea, is that I need that accountability as a woman of faith, as a mom, as a wife, as a caregiver, and as a business owner, as a coach. I want that accountability. Like, okay, Melissa, are you really actively making sure you're carving out time every day to fill your cup physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, so you can show up for your family, so you can show up for your clients? That's really where the rubber meets the road. Okay. So I want you thinking about that as you're listening to this conversation. I want you guys thinking about that. Do you need a coach or mentor like Erin and myself? Do you need accountability, maybe someone of faith in your congregation of faith? Do you need accountability maybe from your partner, like Erin had to go with her husband, of saying, and I've had to do the same thing with my husband, of saying, you know what, I know this is more money on the table, but I need this investment. Okay. I need to do this to be able to move the needle forward professionally or even spiritually. A story of how my husband came alongside me was back in July when the 10 by 10 series dropped in the Holy Healthy Christian Moms. And Erin and Andrea reached out and said, hey, we're doing a founding members price at $60. Do you want lifetime access to this? Because I loved it. I did the free 10 by 10 version, and I loved it. And I got so many breakthroughs from it. And my husband noticed a change. He's like, $60, take it. I don't care. You need this. Invest in the $60. Now I have lifetime access. And I can just come back to this again and again. And I think that's so important. I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't opened my mouth and said, look, I know we're struggling and there's other financial obligations we have right now, but to be able to be the mom and caregiver that I want to be, that God is calling me to be, I need this accountability. So having the ability to do the programs, and even just right now, because of limited budget, just being able to text them on Messenger and say, hey, here's my homework. This is a breakthrough I had, or here's a question I have. That's the accountability I need. That's the investment I need. And I do not regret that. And I want you guys to not feel any shame or guilt for investing in yourself. Okay? Investing in yourself, guys, is not a bad thing. Okay. Whether it's a one-on-one coaching call with, like, say, Erin or I, whether it's investing in even just going to get a massage or something. Okay. Whatever works and is aligned with you, I want you doing it. I want you taking action steps to do so, because investing in yourself holistically is what is going to keep you going in 2023. I don't want you tapping and burning out like Erin did, where she hit rock bottom and having her marriage and having your marriage or relationships fall apart. I don't want you going undiagnosed with a health concern like I did back in 2021 when I had put off my wellness visits and I was having worse gut attacks than normal. And by the time I started seeing my doctor, they were clueless because I'd skipped my wellness visits. They didn't know what had been going on. And so then it ended up taking 4 doctors and 2 procedures to get me diagnosed with IBS. And so then 2022 was really about recovery, changing my diet, getting on medication, then dealing with the aspect of dealing with the emotional and mental and spiritual feelings and frustrations that I had not been dealing with prior to when my husband got sick. Because like Erin shared with her journey, I was very much the same way. I was just so focused on being a mom and a caregiver and learning and educating myself how to care for my husband's epilepsy that I let myself go totally on the back burner, and I paid for it. For me, it manifested. For Erin, it manifested in a way that was more of her marriage falling apart and her physical health. For me, it was definitely my physical. It was definitely my spirituality, I feel, and my physical health, because I ended up with another chronic illness. So it can manifest in one way or another. But I don't want to do that to you at all. So let's see. So Erin, the next question I have for you is, what are 3 tips that you would have for our listeners if they're realizing that there's some red flags going on? Maybe they're not even aware, because remember, like we said before, sometimes it takes you a little bit to realize you're in a storm. Lots of things are happening, but whether you're realizing that you're in a storm right now, or you have to figure out that you're in a storm, how do you navigate that? How can we help women, ambitious Christian women like ourselves, realize that, okay, I have a problem. I'm not taking care of myself in one way or another. And how do I take even just one small, consistent step forward to move the needle forward?
Yeah. So 3 tips to help move that needle forward when you're coming out of the fog, and the fog is lifting and you're realizing, oh, wow, I've got to do something. The first thing is to have a conversation with God before anything else. Like, just stop, have a conversation with him, and give yourself the grace to have the conversation the way that he leads you to have the conversation. So that might mean that you're having the conversation while you're washing the dishes. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be, when the kids are in bed and everything is silent and you have your scripture and your music and your candles burn. It doesn't have to be like that. So like, move yourself out of that perfectionist box into just talk to the Lord. He is omnipresent. He is always with us, and he always is available for us to talk to him. So have a talk with him exactly where you are. And when you talk to him, the second tip is give him the space to talk back to you, to tell you what it is he wants you to do. Don't just make it a one-sided conversation, because he is going to direct your path. Whether you'd work with somebody like me or Melissa, or you reach out to a friend, or even your pastor or whatever, we can all give great advice. Like, we've got a plethora of good advice and all these things and all these amazing steps you can take. But if it's not what the Lord wants you to do, it's not going to work anyway. So go ahead and cut out that frustration piece and allow him to tell you what he wants your next best steps to be. And then do it. Whatever he tells you to do it. Because he is going to make your crooked path straight, and he is going to guide you where you need to go for total health and healing. So he might say, work with Erin, work with Melissa, work with your general practitioner doctor. But he's going to tell you what to do. He also might just be open to what he's going to tell you, because he might tell you to start cutting off some branches of things in your life that are not serving you well. There could be toxic relationships. There could be toxic habits. There could be, just maybe shows you're watching on TV. Like, you don't know what he's going to tell you. So just be prepared for whatever he tells you to do, that it is because he loves you, and he has plans to prosper you and not harm you. And so do it. Do what he's telling you to do. So first step is talk to God wherever you are. Second step is allow him space to tell you what it is he wants you to do. And the third tip is to do it.
Right. So start the conversation, I think, is what I'm hearing. Listen to what he wants you to do. Wait for the nudge or what he has to say, and then take action with what that is. Because obedience, God wants us to be obedient, and God works together, guys. Romans 8:28, he works all things together for, according to his purpose. So I know life is hard sometimes, and we get hit in the gut with some nasty things, but it can still come out of good. Look at Erin and I's story. We both hit rock bottom in one way or another, and now we're building a coaching practice around helping women not deal with the same problems that we did and avoid making the same mistakes that we did. How cool is that? God can take any situation and use it for his good. And we're living out Romans 8:28, literally. And praise the Lord that we are, but we would not have gotten there if we hadn't opened our hearts and our mouths to our spouses, to our support networks around us, be it friends, family, your congregation of faith, and even just the Lord, of saying, help me figure this out, because I cannot do it alone, because we can't live, like it says in the Bible too, we can't live by bread alone. We need many things to help keep us going. And self-care is the same way. It's not a treat. It's not a reward. And it's not just getting enough sleep, getting enough nutrition and exercising. It's nurturing your soul. It's nurturing your mind. And I'm going to even say at this too, like, if you are in a situation where you do need some counseling and some light doses of medication, please do it. There's no shame in that. I had another hard situation I went through in my early 20s, and for a while, my anxiety and my depression was really bad. I had to be on some medication for a year, and I don't regret it. It helped me. If doing that allows you to be able to cope long term and keep the needle moving forward and keep showing up for your family, hello, why would you not do it?
Right.
Okay. All right. Mental health is important. Emotional health is important. Even just giving yourself a mental break. Okay. Give yourself a mental break. If a mental break for you is doing a coaching call with one of us, do it. If a mental break for you is picking up a hobby or a passion again because it's fallen by the wayside after everything you've been through, do it. If getting a mental break, if it gives you a mental break to have a date night once a week with your spouse, or just starting to volunteer or plug back in now that COVID's calming down, so to speak, with your congregation, please do it. Okay. You can't serve from an empty tank and an empty cup. We're proof of that. We've learned that the hard way. So if you take nothing from this call, listen to us in this episode and take action today in 2023 to be holistically healthy for yourself, but also for your family, because they depend on you. And we deal with added stress than the average person. As business owners, we choose to take on other people's problems to serve them. As moms, we've chosen to birth these beautiful babies and hopefully prayerfully create other amazing followers and human beings, but it takes effort. We choose to invest in our relationship with our marriages and our spouses and love them and serve them, but we can't do that from an empty tank. It's just a house of cards, guys. We can't do it from an empty tank. So Erin, if we want more Erin Kay, where the heck can we find more of our girl?
Yeah. So my website's super simple. Erin Kay Coaching, spell out my last name, Kay. ErinKayCoaching.com. There's all kinds of resources in there. You can book a coffee chat with me there. And then my Facebook group you can join. It's called Women at the Well, Christian Health and Wellness Support. And then my podcast, The Well Society. You're welcome to check me out there too.
Yeah, I love it. And where can we find your podcast, just so people are aware? Is it just strictly on a specific platform, or where can we find it?
It's everywhere. It's Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's all over the place.
Okay,
I've got like 15 different places where it's
cool.
Streaming.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So this last question I have for you, well, actually I have two, but this one has been really fun for me with my guests. I've been having a lot of fun with this question. It's, what is something that we have talked about either in today's conversation or personally, or just maybe sharing something else that has just really personally inspired you and just continue to resonate with you in your journey? So you can take it either way, either something in your journey that you've that's really stuck with you, or something even in our conversation today.
Something that has come up recently is about rest. And that's a big thing with caregivers, not taking rest, is feeling like we can't rest until we do everything on our to-do list. So two things with that. Number one, the to-do list never ends until we die. So don't worry about checking everything off on your to-do list, because it's always going to be there. And then the other thing about rest and sleep is, obviously we all know that the Lord created rest, and rest is good. He wants us to have the Sabbath, but then looking at it from a different perspective, that lack of sleep is used as torture, like for prisoners and in other situations, other types of government, that taking away somebody's sleep is used as torture. So how are you torturing yourself? Literally by being, maybe you're trying to be, oh, I'm doing all these things, so I'm giving up my sleep, but you're really torturing yourself. So if other people are using it as a means of torture, then why are you going to use it as a means of torture for yourself? When we don't get sleep, guys, it affects everything. And there are times where we don't get good sleep for whatever reason. We have a sick kid that's up all night, or, things happen, but as a regular routine thing, you really need to be building in rest and good rest.
Absolutely. So that brings into what I teach: consistent bedtime and wake up time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and set times for when you're going to do things, obviously as moms and caregivers and business owners, things come up and our schedule can change on a dime. but still having that intentionality with it though, of like, okay, my get up time every day is 6 a.m. on work days. On office hour, on weekends, I don't set an alarm, because I want to have time to sleep in. So how can you have that boundary? That's the other thing I think that is really important with self-care, if anything, boundaries. Where do you need to have a boundary? Is it a toxic relationship that you need to get rid of? Like Erin said, that the Lord might bring up. Is it having a consistent bedtime and get up time? Is it even just maybe using that window of like those of us with smaller kids who still nap? My daughter is almost 4, so she still naps at this point. Do we need to have that boundary of using that time to get work done or to rest? Personally, for me, it's my me time. I let myself doze off and nap, and or I binge some of my favorite YouTube. That's my me time. Or I read a book, and I have no guilt for it. What do you need to do to set in a boundary for yourself, for your self-care? Is it getting up and having daily time, non-negotiable time in the morning? And how can you habit stack? Let's touch on that for a minute. How can you habit stack that consistency into your routine? Because here's the thing. If you're already doing something, how can you habit stack something else and so it does get done? So it is a non-negotiable part of your day. Personally, for me, on my office hour days, it's a little different on the weekends, and that's fine because I choose to have it be different. But on my office hour days, Monday through Friday, I get my cup of coffee, I get my cup of water, I come into my computer here, turn it on, warm it up. I do my program in Holy Healthy Christian Moms, do my devotional time, journaling time. Then I go into my office hours because I'm already in here working, and I can't access it on my phone, but I prefer to do it on my computer most of the time because it's a little easier to visually see, for one, and I can download and do the work and print off the workbooks as I need to. So habit stack, that's something else. Another thing I do is my essential oils is just breathe those in when I first start my day. So, because I'm in here anyway. So how can you set the tone intentionally for your day, or even at the end of your day, or whatever works for you with your amount of work that you have, either for if you're a mompreneur like us, or if you're a caregiver like I am for a sick spouse, or if you're just a busy stay-at-home mom like Erin is, and being a mompreneur. How can you intentionally habit stack throughout your day to make physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual time a priority for you and your family? Because we can't fill from an empty tank. We can't fill from an empty cup. And the only way we move forward is if we move the needle forward, is if we're intentional with having a routine. And it does take work and it does take effort, because it means that we're going to have to take time out of our day to just have those boundaries to say, this is my time, whether it's this is my time for the Lord, or this is my time for getting in a mental break. This is my time to physically move. This is my time to physically rest. All of these components are important. They're so important. So, Erin, you mentioned your website, but do you have any, besides the coffee chat, do you have any paid offers that are coming out soon that you want to highlight for people to be aware of?
Yes. So by the time this launches out, I will have the 3rd cohort of the Well Society Intensive that is coming out. That is a 16-week group coaching hybrid experience where we really, really dig down deep into where your joy is lacking, where your energy is lacking, where your habits need shifting. And we dig into core values, like really getting in touch with the core values that the Lord has given you, so you can amplify out. That is really, I'm really excited about that program. And then I always have my Women at the Well, which is a monthly group coaching call with Voxer support and a meal planning vault that they can join that anytime.
Nice. I love that. So guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. I'm so glad that you are here. And I hope that each of these episodes is encouraging you through your journey as a busy mom, as a busy caregiver, and doing so with the intent of being more intentional with your whole body self-care. Okay. And if you guys are ready to kick off 2023 in a good way, I have a brand new workshop coming out. It is going to be live for purchase for free on Monday, January 23rd. It's called STEM. So it's going to be diving into my STEM method, where I teach you how to be spiritually connected, manage your thoughts, release your emotions, and build that support network for you as a mom and a caregiver, and just consistently prioritize movement throughout the day, as well as other basic physical self-care, like we touched on in this episode, of sleep and nutrition. It all ties in. And I really want to have you go into 2023 with a realistic, listen to that word, realistic self-care routine that works for you in the season that you're in. Because obviously we all have different lives. We all have different needs, and our families have different needs. So obviously the kind of life that I lead, being a mom of one and having a chronically ill spouse, is going to look way different than, say, like Erin is, where she's also running a business, but she has 4 kids and she has a spouse, and they have different challenges. So I want the plan for you for 2023 to be realistic to what you're in terms of season as a mom and as a caregiver. And I'll just close out by saying too, that as you create your plan for this year, I want you going in with an open mind and just the reality that it may change. Okay. What I needed back in 2020, because of the lack of preparation and the lack of self-care, is different than where I'm at now in 2023, 3 years later. And that's okay. So don't feel like if you make a plan that it's set in stone, you can't tweak it, you can't change it. That is untrue. It's a blueprint. That's why I like what Erin and Andrea's stuff is a lot. They call it blueprints. And that's, I think, important. It's not a concrete foundational plan. It's a blueprint. So there's freedom to walk around in it. You need to be the idea is here, you want to be intentional and have that blueprint to fall back on, but you have the freedom as the Lord leads with his leading to tweak it for whatever season you're in. Maybe your spouse gets into a situation where their health declines. You might need to amp up on building your support network. Your health declines, you need to focus more on physical self-care and powwow with your medical professional. You're struggling mentally or emotionally, maybe you need some more accountability and support, that, from a more either a group session, group situation, kind of like what Erin offers, or maybe like Erin and I both offer, a one-on-one coaching support, to where you can have a more individualized support network system. And that's fine. So just lean into being open with what the Lord has for you for this year, and know that you're doing the best you can. You're not alone. You know your family better than anybody else. You're the captain of your ship, and you're allowed to give yourself grace on those hard mom or caregiver days. Okay. All right, guys, go into this year with intent and hope and purpose. And I'll see you in the next episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. Take care, guys.